Hare Krishna. I've sent the grades for those who took the exams. I've emailed you your grades. If you haven't received an email from me or some message from me regarding your Nectar of Devotion exam, then please help me and send me an email with the exam. Because what happened is a few people, just in the hurry of doing their exam, they forgot to write their name on the exam. So I have a few that are graded, but I'm not sure who they belong to. So I probably have it graded. I just need to connect your name with the exam. So just send me an email and attach your exam to it, so I'll know exactly which one it is, and I'll send you your grades. But most of you should have received them, and to my knowledge, everyone has done very well. One or two people struggled, but they will take it again at some point. And then for your Nectar of Instruction exam and your Isopanisad exam, that we'll do once we complete Isopanisad. And I can tell you, actually, we have here, including today, after today, we have 3 more weeks, and then we'll be done with Isopanisad. So I think we can very comfortably aim to the end of the year. That by the end of the year, we'll finish all 4 books, and all of you who started from the first book, meaning those who started right from the beginning, by the end of the year, you'll be done. And so you'll be a Bhakti Shastri after that. So, and then that exam I will give you in due course. I still need to give you the essay question for that. And I just, actually just yesterday, my first semester here finished. So this was a sort of unique time where we had a lot of things going on because of moving and just a new semester and a new job. Now things are more in the routine. So going forward, I will be quicker in grading the exams and have more time. So thank you for your patience. And so now that my semester is finished, I'll send you the questions for Isopanisad and Nectar of Instruction. And there's no hurry for that. You still have a few weeks, at least 3 or 4 weeks before we actually have the exam. And then we'll do the exam probably at the end of December or early January. Okay, so let us now continue on. Today we are starting with Isopanisad, text 4, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we'll try to cover all the way to text 8 if we can. And also I'll share my slides here. Once again, these slides are the courtesy and the mercy of Mother Urmila. So a big thank you to her. She makes these very amazing slides. And so, very grateful. So last time we covered the invocation, texts 1, 2, and 3. And we saw how deep these verses are, how Krishna, how the Vedas are speaking in such simple language, but their purport is so deep. And for devotees, they have such deep messages, devotional messages. And we also had an appreciation as to why Prabhupada translated this book, and among all the Upanishads, gave us this Upanishad. And now this appreciation will actually increase when we see these verses, and we see how even the very advanced and subtle principles of bhakti are present in the Isopanishad. So among texts 4 to 8, which I mentioned today, we will cover, texts 4 and 5 deal more with sambandha or knowledge. And texts 4 and 5 specifically deal with the characteristics of God, with the nature of the Supreme Person. So we all know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but what is his nature? In what way is he a person? And in what way is he impersonal? And this will go back to the metaphors that we discussed in the first class. and all the, you could say, preparation that we did at that time will come in handy now. Texts 6 to 8 are about Abhideya, that if you have this knowledge, what is the practical application? How do we apply it in our life? And in what way does it help us make advancement in spiritual life? How does it practically change the vision of a devotee? How does it change our life? And then text 6 to 8, these are the result of this practice. What happens? Well, after gaining this knowledge, after applying it in our life and seeing how the devotee applies it in their life, what is the result of that consciousness, that mindset, and that practice? And that is being told in text 6, 7, and 8 also. So, very scientific verses, and the Isopanisad will reveal to us the consciousness or the knowledge that we need to live the life of a devotee. It tells us that this is actually the way to see the world so that we can relate with everyone in the perfect way. So this is actually a very nice image that shows how these 18 mantras connect with one another. Right now, we've just covered the invocation mantras 1, 2, 3. So the invocation is the foundation of knowledge of the Supreme Person. Texts 1 to 3 are practices for living entities. So the invocation, remember, it said Om Purnam Adha Purnam, the knowledge, everything is complete. Krishna is complete, we are also complete. So with that knowledge, how do we act? Well, then we talked about the Ishavasya principle. Texts 1 to 3 are talking about the Ishavasya principle, meaning that if we know that we are complete, Krishna is complete, but our completeness is in relationship with Krishna, then we will offer everything back to the complete whole, which is Krishna. That is the Ishavasya principle. And now text 4 to 5, as we mentioned, this is Sambandha. This is the knowledge of the Supreme Person. Text 6 to 8 is the knowledge and practice of spiritual vision. Well, with that knowledge, how do we practice that? And what are the results of practicing that spiritual vision? So in brief, mantras 4 to 8, we will know the Lord through his revelation and by developing the qualities of an Uttama Bhakta. So we know Krishna by these verses through the knowledge, and as this has been a theme from the beginning, that is through the knowledge, but also it is path philosophies, right? Meaning that we get the knowledge not just by knowing the knowledge, but by practicing the knowledge. And by developing the qualities of an Uttama Bhakta, and by gaining this knowledge, we will receive this spiritual wisdom. We will get to know the Lord. So this is an overview of each mantra. Mantra 4 speaks about the inconceivable Lord is known only through revelation. So it establishes that the infinite can only be known by the infinitesimal if the infinite reveals himself to the infinitesimal. The infinite is unknowable, but the infinite is great enough to reveal itself to the finite. If the infinite is actually infinite, then the infinite is also powerful enough to reveal itself to the finite. Text 5 is Krishna's inconceivable potencies. Text 6 is the vision of the Mahabhagavata. Text 7 is the consciousness of a Mahabhagavata. Text 8 is Krishna's qualities known to the Mahabhagavatas. So the vision, the consciousness of the Mahabhagavata are shown here in the Isopanisad. So here is now text 4. Anejadekam manasa javiyo naina devapnuvan purvamarshat tadhavato jnanatyeti tishtat tasmin apo matarishva dadhati. Anejadekam manasa javiyo naina devapnuvan purvamarshat tadhavato jnanatyeti tishtat tasminnapo matarishva dadati. Although fixed in his abode, the personality of Godhead is swifter than the mind and can overcome all others running. The powerful demigods cannot approach him. Although in one place he controls those who supply the air and rain, he surpasses all in excellence. So here, all the contradictions of the Lord are being described. We'll see in text 4 and text 5 that how the Lord is fixed in one abode, yet he's fixed in one place, yet he can win everyone in running. He can overcome all others that are running. He is swifter than the mind. Although he's at one place, he controls everything all around the world. So all of these are contradictions. If something is fixed, if a tree is in one place, then the tree cannot be running. But Krishna is the resolution of all contradictions. And this is one of the most central qualities of God, is that God is achintya. He is inconceivable. Krishna is inconceivable. And the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Bhagavatam, they always take great pleasure in describing the inconceivable qualities of the Lord. So the very first mistake that we make when speaking about God is to reduce Krishna to our own limited senses. To say that God is like this and not like this, in many ways is reducing him. So the Isopanisad destroys this misconception and clarifies that Krishna is both person and impersonal. To love Krishna, one must know him. But how can tiny, limited beings know God? This is the problem. This is the problem that every religious tradition faces around the world. The problem is this, that if God is unlimited and we are very limited and tiny, then we cannot know God. We just can't know him. There's no way for the limited to know the unlimited. On the other hand, if we say that we cannot know God, which many skeptics and philosophers say, then we're saying something about God. We're saying that we know God and you can't know him. And that also is a contradiction. So if someone is going to follow this philosophy, the only thing that they can do is not say anything, but something we must say. So on one hand, God is unknowable. On the other hand, he is knowable. Then the question is then, how can we know God? How can we actually know him? One second here. So this is the quandary. Mantra 4 informs us that although the Lord is always situated in his own abode, he cannot be approached by the mind or even by the powerful demigods unless he reveals himself to us. We cannot imagine or understand his transcendental abode or activities. So now, the Lord is the greatest one. He's unlimited, more unlimited than the ocean. And no one can know the ocean. I mean, there's just no way to know all of the ocean. Yet, it's said that the devotees know Krishna. They know him in full. They know Krishna fully. In many places, it's said this, that the devotees of the Lord, they are fully cognizant about the Lord. They understand the Lord. So how is it possible? Well, it is only possible if the infinite reveals himself to the finite. that also, that limitation we cannot put upon God, that God is so unlimited that he cannot limit himself, because then that he cannot show himself, because then we are putting a limitation on him. Yes, the inconceivable Lord cannot be approached by our limited means, but if Krishna wants to reveal himself, then he can be revealed. And that is up to Krishna. In one of these purports, in text 4 to 8, Srila Prabhupada writes how if we are appointed to the high court position, then he says that in order to get that high court position, we must have the qualifications to get that position. One must be qualified. However, it is not the qualification alone that promotes one to the position of the high court justice. The qualification is there, but only when the justices or the president appoint someone to the high court position can that person be appointed, right? So two qualifications are necessary. One is your own qualification, but the second and most important is the higher personality bestowing upon you the honorable position of that position. Someone becomes a CEO of a company or something like this when the board elects them to be so. So it's not just their qualification, but it's the empowerment that the board gives them. In the same way, we may read as many books as we want about the Lord. We may be a great devotee ourselves, but only if the Lord himself reveals himself to us, he bestows upon us that great benediction, can the devotee receive that knowledge. Now, one caveat, I mentioned how the devotees know Krishna in full, and that is because they know him through devotion. Mother Yashoda was able to catch the hand of Krishna, although Krishna is the Brahman, but she was able to hold him and bind him, that is, find his circumference. So in that way, the devotees know Krishna completely. But on the other hand, the Bhagavatam says that even Krishna himself does not know the limits of his own power. What to speak of the devotees? Even the Lord himself does not know the limits of his own Maya, it said. Maya meaning the energy of the Lord. Maya can mean the material energy, but in the most general definition, Maya simply means power or energy. And that Maya can be Yoga Maya or Mahamaya, but that Maya is actually the power of the Lord. And so Krishna does not know even the limits of his own power. And this is why even Krishna takes pleasure in his own pastimes, because his own Yoga Maya surprises him. His own Yoga Maya is ever expanding and you could say amuses him, or he gains pleasure in its own workings. So the devotees know the Lord because they know his heart. They have access to his heart. But even the great devotees who Krishna reveals himself to do not know Krishna in full, in the sense that they don't know all of his powers. They know him in full in one sense because they know Krishna, but they don't know all of the extent of all of his powers, because even Krishna himself does not know that. That's the very definition of unlimited. So again, that's a contradiction. It's both things. Krishna can fully reveal himself. Krishna is all knowledgeable. He's omniscient. Yet at the same time, he does not know the limits of his own power. How is this possible? Because Krishna is achintya. He is inconceivable. The Lord's eternal abode is situated within his spiritual or internal energy. It is only when the individual spirit souls, known as his marginal energy, desire to enjoy separately from him that they are placed within this material or external energy. Why don't we know him? We don't know him because we have been placed in the external energy rather than in the internal energy of the Lord. And we are the marginal energy. We are on the fence. We can go on one side or the other side. At every moment in our life, we're always on the fence. We can choose the path towards God. We can choose the path towards nescience. This is being on the fence. So this is the nature of the soul. Now, Prabhupada says in the purports, he says how Krishna has made a role, a part for every living entity. He's naturally made us that way. Since time immemorial, we've been that way. That each living entity has a particular role and a part to play in Krishna's pastimes. And it is up to us if we want to play that part. It is up to us if we want to participate in the Lord's pastimes and fulfill our potential in that part. And if we don't want to, that's where our freedom is. So Krishna's made us a part for us. So someone would say, well, we don't have freedom. No, he's made the part. He's the director. He's made the stage set. He's made the drama. But it's our freedom if we want to participate in that drama, in that part, or if we want to be separate from the Lord and go away from him, turn our backs towards him, and try to enjoy this material, miserable world, this external world. That is our choice. The part will not change. Krishna does not change. The spiritual world does not change. But our choice may change, where we may choose Krishna rather than Maya. So mantra 4 tells us how to know him. Thus, when we engage ourselves in his service, desiring to dovetail our activities for his enjoyment, he naturally becomes inclined to again reveal himself and our eternal relationship with him in the spiritual world. So when we engage ourselves in his service, knowing that we have this part to play, as I mentioned, dovetaling, desiring to dovetail all our activities for his enjoyment, he naturally becomes inclined to again reveal himself to us and our eternal relationship with him in the spiritual world. So why do we then do all these practices of bhakti? What is the purpose? If Krishna can reveal himself to us, and in fact, the only way we can know Krishna, the unlimited Krishna, is if he reveals himself to us. Why should we practice? The reason we practice is because Krishna then becomes inclined to do that. Through our practice, we show our sincerity to Krishna. That's all. It's not like we have to be very clear on this point. It's not like if we do our sadhana very nicely, then, we're moving closer to Krishna. When we are serving Krishna, when we are chanting Krishna's names, then we are actually moving closer to Krishna. No, when we are chanting and serving Krishna, we are showing our sincerity to Krishna. We are showing more sincerity, and then by Krishna's mercy, we are moving closer to him. So yes, we are moving closer in the sense that Krishna will show his mercy. We are confident. But sometimes Krishna may not show his mercy. Like we see in the story of Narad Muni. He tests Narad Muni. That he disappears from him, even though he's worshiping him, even though he's fixing his mind upon him. But that alone does not bring us closer to him. But that shows our sincerity. And this is also true about the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. In chanting, we chant for so many years, for such a long time, and we often feel that we don't feel anything. So then we take a japa retreat and we try to learn some techniques on how to chant nicely. And so we learn these techniques and we apply them. But we should know that these techniques in and of themselves will not improve our chanting. So then why do we do it? We do it because by trying these things, we are expressing our sincerity to Krishna. And through that expression of our sincerity, then Krishna becomes happy and he reveals himself to us. Actually, what he does is he bestows great humility upon us. And then when we get that humility, then automatically the holy name of Krishna becomes manifest to us. And this is his great mercy. Then we have in this purport, Prabhupada describes how the way the scriptures resolve these contradictions. So I mentioned how Krishna is achintya and he's contradictory. The way they resolve it is by understanding the nature of Krishna's energies. And through this very central idea of energies, of Shaktis, which actually is very unique to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And it's a very special part of our philosophy that is not present even in other forms of Vaishnavism, through which the Acharyas headed by Jiva Goswami have resolved many contradictions. Because although it is inconceivable and it's a contradiction, but still we want to resolve the contradiction. Still, the nature of the soul is that we want an answer. How does this happen? I mean, for anything we could say, oh, it's inconceivable. But that's not, showing the strength of a philosophy. A good philosophy answers questions when they're asked. So how can Krishna be fixed in one place and also be simultaneously present everywhere? He can do so through his energies. And it is due to his energies that Krishna can be in both places. Through inconceivability, we can partially understand the concept that the Lord has three main types of energies. A, internal, that is the spiritual world; marginal, the living beings; and C, the external, the material world. Heat, light, and fire. Although situated in one place, a fire can distribute its light and heat for some distance. Similarly, the absolute personality of Godhead, although fixed in his transcendental abode, can diffuse his different energies everywhere. Although situated in one place, a fire can distribute its light and heat for some distance. You may remember we talked about this metaphor in terms of the sun, but this is true of any fire. Fire is in one place, but the heat is going everywhere. The light is shining everywhere. So in a simple material phenomena like fire, this can happen. So what to speak of the Lord? Similarly, Krishna can also do this. Actually, fire is a metaphor that the Bhagavatam and the Upanishads use very often, because fire is a very nice metaphor. Krishna is like the fire. Then from the fire, there's sparks coming out. That's the living beings. The sparks are the living beings. And from the fire, you're also getting heat and light. And that is the material creation. That is Krishna's different energies being emanated from him. So there's four primary characteristics being described here of the personality of Godhead. Krishna, he is fixed in one place, but he is the swiftest. He is the fastest, faster than even the mind. Number two, he can't be approached even by the demigods. So we think that many people think that Krishna is on par with the demigods, but what to speak of that? He cannot even be approached by the demigods. And therefore, the second offense against the holy name is to consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the names of Lord Vishnu. The name of the Lord is much greater than any of the demigods. And it's interesting that it mentions even Lord Shiva, because on one hand, we say that Lord Shiva is an incarnation of the Lord, of Lord Vishnu, but we should never think that even the name of Lord Shiva is equal to the name of Krishna. Krishna is localized, but controls all parts of the creation. So Krishna is controlling everything, all the while enjoying his pastimes. And finally, Krishna is the most excellent. He is Bhagavan. So Krishna is Bhagavan, meaning that he is the possessor of all the six opulences. He is the most excellent. He is the most wonderful. No one can surpass him in any qualities. And this is something we have to remember. Even the great devotees, no one can compare with Krishna. So we say that, the devotees are more merciful than the Lord, and we must worship the Lord. We must serve the Lord, the devotees of the Lord. Yes, that's true. All of that is true. But Krishna is the most excellent. because the devotees of the Lord, they are after Krishna. Srimati Radharani is trying to serve Krishna, even though we say Srimati Radharani is more important to the bhaktas than Krishna is. And Srimati Radharani is Madana Mohana Mohani. But still, Krishna is Krishna, because her life and soul is serving and loving Krishna. Prabhupada specifically mentions that this verse is very important for our preaching, because this fourth mantra of Sri Isopanisad very clearly suggests that the absolute truth is ultimately the absolute person. Otherwise, there would have been no need to mention so many details in support of his personal features. So how can we even describe the Lord, that he's present in one place and not present elsewhere, if Krishna is not a person? This question would not come up. And now in text 5, this point becomes all the more clear, very explicit. Tadijati tannaijati taddure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvasyasya bahyata tadejati tannaijati taddure tadvantike tadantarasya sarvasya tadu sarvasyasya bahyata. The Supreme Lord walks and does not walk. He is far away, but he is very near as well. He is within everything, and yet he is outside of everything. So Krishna walks, but does not walk. He is far, yet he is very near. He is within everything, yet he is outside of everything. Mantra 5 continues this discussion, describing that the Lord has inconceivable potencies, which render him unknowable to those whom he does not favor. Mantra 5 illuminates the Lord's inconceivable spiritual nature. At any time, the Lord can be present both within the material world and spiritual worlds. So we always say that Krishna is within our heart. And this is actually one of the themes of Isopanisad, that Krishna is present within the heart of every living being. And Krishna is present within every atom. Every place Krishna is present. Yet, because Krishna's presence is immanent in this world, Krishna at the same time does not lose his transcendence. Krishna is also simultaneously in the spiritual world, continuously performing his spiritual pastimes. He's performing his Leela, ever enjoying and almost forgetful that he is in this material world, controlling this material world, fulfilling the desires of all living beings. He is so absorbed in his pastimes that he's almost not even cognizant or concerned by the fact that he's in this material world, also guiding us. Just like so many times people say that, oh, Krishna was present, and Krishna, Krishna showed the path to me, and Krishna gave me this inspiration. But we can imagine that how small we are, and how even we are so small, and Krishna is personally reciprocating with us in so many different ways. And that's because he has his full attention devoted to us, because he's present within our heart. Imagine trillions of living entities, yet Krishna gives his full attention to every single living entity, even if we're far, far away from him, away from his spiritual abode. Yet when the Lord appears in this material world, such as in the deity or his holy name, for the sake of revealing himself to us and accepting our service, foolish people conclude that he has accepted a material form. They cannot understand the Lord's ability to convert material energy into spiritual energy as he is the source and controller of both of them. So this verse, on this one, previous verse was trying to establish Krishna's personhood and show that Krishna is both personal and impersonal. But in this verse, the Isopanisad is showing the nature of Krishna's personal form. That just because Krishna is not walking and he's present as a deity does not mean that he does not walk. He also walks because his form is spiritual. Just because he does not eat with his mouth does not mean that he does not eat. He is eating with his eyes. So Krishna his form is a spiritual form. It's a form that can walk and also not walk. While not walking, it can walk. While not eating, it can eat. So because Krishna is a person, to say Krishna is impersonal because we don't want to bring him down to our human level is incorrect. But also to think that because Krishna is a person, he's just like us. His form is also like us. He gets old and dies. That is also a problem. And hence the Isopanishad is saying that these material avatars are not God. Krishna's form is always transcendental. Krishna never gets a toothache. He never gets old. He never dies. Krishna is also near and also far. To the surrendered soul, he is very near, but to the unsurrendered, he is very far away. So Krishna may be present in our heart, but if we're not surrendered to him, we are very far away from him. Just like Prabhupada gave the example that the mosquito is sitting on the body of the king. We all aspire that, I may, meet the president. I may meet the vice president. I may meet the prime minister. And one little insect, people have to be so qualified to meet them, but one little insect goes and sits on their head for hours on end. If they get a tick in their head, they might be there for a week. And they have no qualification. But Prabhupada says that just because they are sitting on the body of the king does not mean that they are connected to the king closely. Physical proximity does not mean that we are closely connected. It is the heart, it is the mind, the mindset that closely connects us. And that is, therefore, the devotee may be thousands of miles away from Krishna, but he is very close to Krishna because he's connected through the heart. Maybe not physically, but through the heart. So the Lord, as I mentioned, these are the three contradictions mentioned here. The Lord walks but does not walk. He is far away but very close. He's inside everything but also outside everything. And the pastime that best illustrates this nature of the Lord is the pastime of Lord Nrsingadev. Prahlad Maharaj had this vision, and this knowledge is there, and the Bhagavatam is showing us examples of devotees who actually imbibe this knowledge and they actually have this vision. So Prahlad Maharaj had this vision. Therefore, what was the result? He was not afraid of his father because he knew that the Lord is present everywhere. And when his father asked, "Is Krishna present in this pillar?" he said, "Yes, Krishna is inside everything." So therefore, Krishna is inside this pillar. And Prabhupada writes there that he could actually feel the presence of the Lord. He was not just saying out of knowledge or theoretically. He could actually feel that, yes, the Lord is here. And therefore, when Hiranyakashipu breaks that pillar, Lord Nrsingadev comes charging out, showing that he is actually present there. Prabhupada writes, "With our limited fund of knowledge, we cannot accommodate such contradictions. And therefore we conceive of the Lord in terms of our limited powers of understanding. For example, the impersonalist philosophers of the Mayavad school accept only the Lord's impersonal activities and reject his personal form. But the members of the Bhagavata school, adopting the perfect conception of the Lord, accept his inconceivable potencies and thus understand that he is both personal and impersonal." So here it is. He is both personal and impersonal. The Bhagavatas know that without inconceivable potencies, there can be no meaning to the words Supreme Lord. Very interesting here, this last sentence. The Bhagavatas know that without inconceivable potencies, there can be no meaning to the words Supreme Lord. Supreme means that he's beyond our understanding. If we can understand everything about God, then in what way is he God? Therefore, if we are feeling confused or God is beyond, hidden from us, we should not um, uh, feel that God is not real, but rather know that is the reality of God, because God, by definition, is beyond our understanding. So therefore, simultaneous oneness and difference, achintya bheda bheda tattva. We should not take it for granted that because we cannot see God with our eyes, the Lord has no personal existence. Sri Isopanisad refutes this argument by declaring that the Lord is far away but very near also. He is the eternal form, the primeval Lord. His impersonal aspect or Brahman effulgence is but the glow of his personal rays, just as the sun's rays are the glow of the sun god. Although there is oneness, the Lord in his personal form still enjoys unlimitedly all the pleasures enjoyed minutely by the tiny part and parcel living entity. So Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, right? He is Akhila Rasamrita Murti. All the rasas are within him. So how could he be impersonal? We have a face. So how can the source not have a face? We enjoy relationships. So how can Krishna not enjoy relationships? So in fact, what to speak of not having these things, Krishna enjoys unlimitedly what we, tiny particles, enjoy in a very limited way. And therefore, those who are impersonalists, they have no conception of God. I mean, their conception is so pathetic, so limited. God is light. God is energy. How boring. These persons need knowledge about Krishna. When we have no knowledge, then we say neti, neti, neti. Not this, not this, not this. The materialist and the impersonalist, what do they know? They know nothing about Krishna, about God, about reality. So now in this verse, this mantra, leading up to this point, we were talking about Prahlad Maharaj had this knowledge. So then this verse now tells us what is the result of this knowledge. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanupashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanupashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. He who sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, who sees all living entities as his parts and parcels, and who sees the Supreme Lord within everything, never hates anything or any being. So this knowledge leads us to the realization that Krishna is present in every soul. Krishna is present in every living being, and that everything's in relation to Krishna. And when we understand that everything is in relationship with Krishna, and Krishna is the most wonderful and the most perfect, and we understand that every living being is closely related to Krishna, every living being is a child of God, then we will not hate anything or anyone. We will not hate anything or any person. And this is the result of this knowledge. So if we were to flip this verse around, what this verse is saying, that if we come to the position or the platform of not hating anything or any being, then that platform is only possible with the knowledge that Krishna is present within every heart. Because only when we see that Krishna is present in every heart and every living being is dear to Krishna, can we come to the conclusion that every living being is dear to the Lord, that we should not um, uh, hate any living being. And I was thinking that how this verse and this Upanishad resonates so much with the nectar of instruction, with the Upadeshamrita, which is such a, you could say, Rasika book on bhakti, right? And this Upanishad is more like a philosophical book. It's not exactly a Gaudiya Vaishnav text, it's just, a Vedic text. But how this verse is telling the exact same message as the Nectar of Instruction, where we read in the Nectar of Instruction, it says that the very definition of an Uttamadhikari devotee, an Uttamadhikari devotee is defined as someone who has given up the proclivity, who does not possess the proclivity to criticize anyone. The definition of an Uttamadhikari devotee is that they, what's the exact word Prabhupada uses? They have given up the propensity to criticize. So an Uttamadhikari devotee can be identified when they have that mood and that vision. They don't just see bad in others. They don't see bad in others. They see everyone as a pure living soul. And here the Upanishad is saying the same thing, that if we see everyone as part and parcel of Krishna and see that Krishna is present in every heart, then we'll see, oh, this person is a pure living entity because he's part of Krishna who's pure. And Krishna himself is residing in this person's heart. So therefore, this soul is my friend. And every soul is like this. This means every soul is like my friend. So true humility can actually only be practiced with real knowledge. We cannot practice it artificially like the materialists do. They try to, artificially do it with their friends and their family members, and then they go and eat an animal. They go kill a cow and eat it. Why? Because it's artificial. They're practicing it using certain techniques, but they don't have the knowledge that in every soul, Krishna is present. So how can I cause harm to any living entity? So this is why Prabhupada, he first of all gave us spiritual knowledge, and then he told us how to practice. Because without the knowledge, without the vision that Krishna is present in every living being, we actually cannot develop these qualities, these very divine qualities of a devotee. And if someone has developed these divine qualities, we must understand that they are seeing the Lord in every person. The great devotees of the Lord, they see Krishna in all people, in all places, in all situations, and in all exchanges. Because in all situations they see Krishna. Because if there's a difficult situation, an unfortunate situation, then they see that Krishna is coming to me through this situation. Krishna is guiding me, or Krishna is appearing to me in this situation. Mantra 6 describes the vision of one who can see Krishna everywhere, the Mahabhagavata devotee. And just like this verse resonates with the nectar of instruction, that resonates with the Bhagavad Gita. And we see that every literature in the world is, all the scriptures in this world are telling us this same theme. Gita says, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini Shuni Chaiva Shrupakaja Pandita Samadarshana. That the vision of the Pandita, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini, he sees the Brahmana, the dog and the dog eater, equally due to his seeing the Lord present everywhere. So the Gita also is giving us the same message, that Krishna is present in all situations. So this is actually a very interesting point, and since I remember this right now, I'll mention it, is that how in the Upanishads, you'll see that sometimes they're emphasizing oneness. They're emphasizing impersonalism. And you may wonder that, if Prabhupada's, Lord Chaitanya's mission was to, establish Krishna as a person, then why are these scriptures talking about impersonalism or the oneness? This is not impersonalism, but the oneness of God, that how everything is one. And the reason is because difference is actually very obvious. It's obvious that things are different. I'm different than you are different than your computer, the computer is different than a tree, and we all are different than God. So if we're not an impersonalist, actually to see difference is very, I mean, for most people, for the normal person, difference is the obvious thing. And so they are emphasizing oneness to remind us and tell us about the relationship of everything with Krishna. That no, actually everything is Krishna's energy. Therefore, everything is one. Everything is one with the Lord. So they're trying to actually correct balance the bias in some ways. We're naturally disposed to see things differently, but they're emphasizing oneness to not deny the obvious. I mean, obviously things are different, but to remind us that there's also, in essence, everything is one. There's also a connection with Krishna. And that description of oneness is not contradicting the difference. But then impersonalists, they take advantage of those verses. They ignore the verses that emphasize difference and they say, oh, everything is one. But the Upanishads very clearly emphasize both oneness and difference for this purpose of reminding us that no, everything is connected to Krishna. Everything, and we can meditate on this. And this vision, and this is actually the next verse, it actually solves our problems. Because then we're not worried about things. We say, whatever happens, it's Krishna's arrangement. This is Krishna coming to me. Krishna's in control. Everything and everyone is part of the Lord, and he is within everything. In Mantra 6, the devotee sees everything and everyone in relation to the Supreme Lord as we engage in practicing devotional service and receiving knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, we begin to recognize other living entities also as spirit souls of the same spiritual nature as ourselves and the Lord. So rather than seeing difference, which is obvious, we start to see oneness between us and other souls. We begin to recognize that all living souls have the same spiritual nature that I do. And therefore, how can I feel that I'm better than them or even worse than them? We're all made of the same spiritual nature. We're the same spirit soul. So a tiger is very different than me, but a tiger is also same because the tiger has the same spiritual nature. Gradually, our envy and desire to enjoy others decreases as we realize that we are all eternal, infinitesimal, spiritual sparks simply meant to give pleasure to the Lord. A devotee who has reached this highest stage of realization always tries to engage everyone in the Lord's service. So true knowledge is realizing things as they are. And when we realize things as they are, we can enjoy this world and connect with everyone in this world in a very nice way. Because realizing things as they are means realizing that everyone is an infinitesimal spiritual spark, simply meant to give Krishna pleasure. Everyone is very small. Everyone is just a minute part of Krishna. And their whole purpose, their whole reason for existence is to give Krishna pleasure. And therefore, my role in this material world is simply to try to encourage everyone to fulfill their role, their service to Krishna, and therefore try to engage them in Krishna service. We see in the material world, I was just experiencing this recently at my work, that people are so envious of one another and they desire to take advantage of one another. It's like that's the basic principle of material life. Just recently I was feeling so like annoyed with one of this co-worker because it's just so obvious that they work out of envy and competition and trying to pull other people down. But you just see it for what it is, that this material world is just, the whole point of this material consciousness is to enjoy others. Just like now they're starting to produce this artificial meat, which is actually very good because it's just made of vegetables. It's protein, and it's a replacement for meat. So people who have the taste, they can still taste the meat without causing harm to an animal. And many of you have probably read about this a lot. It's like now becoming a big corporation, like on a massive multinational corporate level. They're producing this. It's like the new food is artificial meat. But many people, they won't eat that. They will only eat the meat, even though this is healthier, it's protein, it doesn't cause cancer in the way that normal meat does. Why? Because if you ask them, they'll respond and say, someone has to die for me to eat. Their mood is that it's not just about the taste. I should know that someone died so that I can eat. And that is the material envy. So envious of other living beings, that the hallmark of that envy is that for my pleasure, someone else should die. So that my pleasure is defined by taking, by enjoying someone else. And the highest form of enjoyment of someone else, or the most grossest form of enjoying someone else, is to enjoy their, is to kill them and to eat them. And the spiritual consciousness is completely flipping that around. It's how can I be the well-wisher of every living being, not enjoying every living being, not envious of any other living being, but how can I be the well-wisher of every living being? And this is the mood of a servant. That is my role, that Krishna created me so that I can be the Lord's servant. And this means, how can I be the well-wisher of every living being? Let the animal live. Let me fast. This is the quality of a great devotee. And then when I was experiencing this at my work, then I had to remind myself that no, my role is to be a well-wisher. So and immediately when I changed my consciousness, when I was reminded of this, tried to change it, didn't change, but when I reminded myself of this, immediately I got relief. It's like, okay, no matter what this person does, I have to try to be their well-wisher. I have to hope the best for them. I have to pray for the best for them. And then that is the correct consciousness. That is the Isopanisad consciousness. So through this knowledge, we can gain that spiritual consciousness, that these are spiritual particles, and they are therefore meant to be very happy and giving pleasure to the Lord. So there's no question that a devotee can see another living being unhappy. A devotee wants to see every living being very, very happy. Paradukha dukhi. The three conditions for achieving a non-envious consciousness: see everything in relation to the Supreme Lord, see all entities as his part and parcels, and third one, see him within everything. So see everything in relation to the Supreme Lord. If we do that, then we won't be envious of anyone, because we see this is not that person, this is Krishna. Krishna is manifesting his potency in this person. Number two, see all entities as his part and parcels. Everyone is equal, and see him within everything. see Krishna is present and giving power to all things. Therefore, when a devotee sees someone who's very gifted in this world, who has great fortune, then rather than feeling envious of him, which is what the material consciousness is, this is every day we see this, the material world, someone gets a promotion, other people feel very envious of him. The devotee says that, oh, the Lord has invested his power in this person. So when a devotee sees a very powerful person, even if that person is not a devotee, the devotee still offers respect to that person because they recognize that Krishna, for some reason or the other, has decided to invest his power, his energy, a disproportionate amount of his energy in this person. So this person must have been pious in some lifetime and therefore has this benediction. So Prabhupada in one place says, we have nothing to do with politics and we don't care for material leaders, but at the same time, the devotee will respect, the president or, the people, the police officer, because they understand that Krishna has invested his potency in these people to manage affairs of this world. And in that way, the devotee is not envious of them, but rather sees the Lord's power in them. And this verse, therefore, or in the purport of this very verse, Prabhupada talks about the Kanishadikari, the Madhyamadikari, and the Uttamadikari. So very similar again to the Nectar of Instruction verse, the same almost copy here. So the Kanishadikari, he describes, goes to the church, temple, or mosque, considers God to be present only there, doesn't know who is in which position spiritually or who is realized. And in his practice of Krishna consciousness is mechanical and quarrelsome. So the Kanishadikari manifests, you could say, devoutness to serving God, but has not developed the realization on how to serve the devotees and relate with different levels of devotees. He also only sees God in the temple, and unlike Prahlad Maharaj, does not see Krishna present in all situations, in all places, and in all people. The Madhyamadikari recognizes 4 different categories and relates with them differently. So the Madhyamadikari recognizes, that my job is not just to worship the Lord, but there's also others who I must worship. And what are these 4 categories? And some people I need to avoid also. One category is the Lord, the Supreme Lord. The second category are the advanced devotees of the Lord, or the devotees of the Lord who are worthy of guidance, worthy of taking guidance. The third category are those who are innocent. They are Krishna's parts and parcels, but they have forgotten their spiritual nature. They have forgotten who they are. And so therefore, they are, as we said in the last slide, someone who the devotee actively tries to bring and engage them back in Krishna's service, bring them to Krishna. And the fourth category are those who are envious. And the Madhyamadikari, recognizing that they are not an Uttamadikari, they avoid the envious. They don't try to preach to them because they're not open to it, nor do they criticize them, nor do they fight with them, like, in other words, nor do they try to, you could say, refute their arguments, but they simply ignore them because they are like someone who is pretending to sleep. They're not actually sleeping like the innocent are. They're pretending to sleep. So if a person is actually sleeping, if you shake them, you can wake them up, right? If someone's actually sleeping, they will wake up if you shake them. But if someone's pretending to sleep, and if you try to wake them up, you cannot, because they weren't asleep to begin with. So in the same way, we avoid the envious. We wait for them to come around, to turn around, before trying to preach to them on the Madhyam Adhikari level, which is very key because on the Uttam Adhikari level, the Uttam Adhikari has that power and potency to even change the envious. They have that power, like Narad Muni. But the Madhyam Adhikari recognizes these four different categories and relates with them differently. He worships the Lord. He worships the devotees. He preaches to the innocent. He helps the innocent, and he avoids the envious. And then finally, the Uttamadhikari devotee sees everything in relation with Krishna, doesn't discriminate between different categories of devotees, sees all on the spiritual platform, regardless of their material situation, sees how everyone is relating with Krishna, and simply tries to do good for them, regardless of how they act. He sees that they are all obeying Lord Krishna, even if unwillingly. So all of us are serving Krishna, either directly or indirectly, by being in this material world, because we are being forced to obey the laws of material nature, which are the laws of Krishna. And therefore, we are obeying him, even if we are obeying him unwillingly. So the Uttamadhikari devotee has this vision where they can see how everything is in relationship with Krishna. They see everyone on the spiritual platform. So we don't have this vision, but still we can try to develop this vision. We can still attempt to inculcate these qualities because we want to advance in spiritual life. So we see all spiritual beings. We have to remind ourselves that we have to see them in relationship to the bigger picture of Krishna consciousness, the bigger picture of why we're here in this material world. And when we see them in that bird's eye vision, then we will start training our mind to see everything in relationship with Krishna. Okay, the present situation is here, but how does this relate with Krishna? How does, what is Krishna's hand in this situation? And that is developing the Uttamadhikari consciousness. Though we are not on that level, we are trying to develop that consciousness. We should never discriminate between devotees based upon their caste. And that is developing the Uttamadhikari consciousness by seeing everyone as a spiritual being. We should see materialists also. Oh, this is actually a spirit soul who's a great devotee of Krishna, but has forgotten their relationship with Krishna. So they're not fat or bad or thin or smelly. They are devotees. So we can think of them in these ways. Practice that consciousness, that reminding ourselves, no, actually, I should feel compassion, not hatred. Just yesterday, 2 days ago, I was on the road, and this trucker, this big guy with a big truck, he just purposely, because he knew it was such a big truck, he just cut right in front of me, to the point that if I did not brake, he would have caused an accident. And he knew he was kind of doing it on purpose. He knew this thing. And the initial response a person feels is you feel very angry because the person is, misbehaving, so to say. But the thing is that, again, we can change that feeling into a feeling of a compassion. That, this poor truck driver, he has no other pleasure in this world other than, or no other power in this world other than showing the power of the truck that he's driving. So transforming that feeling of rage into that feeling of compassion, that this is all this person has, their level of enjoyment, their level of realization is so less. They don't have Krishna. They've forgotten the happiness felt in loving Krishna. Therefore, they're acting in this way. So how unfortunate it is. How unfortunate or pitiable is their situation. And how fortunate I am that I have knowledge about Krishna, and how can I share this fortune with this person who's acting in such a foolish way. So no, we're not Uttamadikari, but we can develop the consciousness of an Uttamadikari so that one day we can that can become our consciousness. We were just reading a very nice lecture from Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada was mentioning that how the basis of spiritual life, of devotional service, is leading a life in Sattva Gun. And it's a very amazing lecture. It's in the Back to Garden magazine. Prabhupada says this very clearly. He says, we must develop the life of Sattva Gun, of the mode of goodness, if we want to come closer to Krishna. And what does leading the life of Sattva Gun mean? It means giving up the gunas of passion and ignorance. It means giving up lust, anger, greed, these qualities that are attached to passion and ignorance. So we have to remind ourselves that we are not these modes of nature. We are not these modes. We can establish ourselves in the mode of goodness, lead our life in that way, and then life becomes very nice. That we are, all of a sudden it slows down. It becomes more intentional. It becomes just more peaceful. Life is no longer so crazy when we establish ourselves in the mode of goodness, and then we can contemplate spiritual things. Then we can develop nicely our Krishna consciousness. If we are always in anxiety, then how can we chant our rounds nicely? How can we perform our service? How can we think about spiritual things? So this is the mode or the spiritual platform that the consciousness which we try to develop. So the application, this very point is being pointed out here. Imitation versus practice. Don't imitate the Uttamadikari. You'll become a false philanthropist. Prabhupada says in the purport. He says we should not imitate the Uttamadikari. To achieve universal peace and brotherhood, you have to learn from the Uttamadikari, who will teach you how to actually come to the spiritual platform. We have to practice developing that consciousness by learning from the Uttamadikari how to do that. And this then leads to mantra 7. It flows in very, very nicely to this point that I was mentioning, how when we develop this consciousness, then our life becomes very, very peaceful. And you might have been thinking, well, I was bringing this topic just to, bring in a, modern day application. But in fact, this is what the Isopanisad is saying. Mantra 7 says exactly this. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaiva bhut vijanataha tatra ko mohaka shoka ekatvam manupashyata. Yasmin sarvani bhutani atmaiva bhut vijanata tatra ko mohaka shoka ekatvam manupashyata. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Lord, becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? Once again, one who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Lord, becomes a true knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? Right? So Prabhupada here is, Krishna here is saying that one who sees everyone as spiritual particles and in quality one with the Lord, part of the Lord, of a spiritual quality, their life becomes very peaceful. When situated in that vision, our life becomes very peaceful. What can be illusion or anxiety for such a person? Meaning that when there's too much anxiety in our life, we cannot develop this vision. And so Sattva Gun, therefore, coming to the point of goodness where our life is situated on that level so that we can have less anxiety and more time for spiritual life. Mantra 7 continues describing the consciousness of the Mahabhagavata, which was introduced in Mantra 6. In Mantra 7, the pure devotee sees all spiritual souls as having the same qualities as the Lord. On the spiritual platform, the living entities and the Supreme Lord share not only the same spiritual nature, but also the same interest, just as a family or nation has a common interest. That Supreme Person becomes the center of enjoyment and activities for all the individual spirit souls, and the Lord enjoys himself in their association. Within this highest realization of spiritual activities, there's no illusion or anxiety. So, when we are when our interest is the same as the Lord, when we say that whatever the Lord does is okay because the Lord is fulfilling the Lord's plan and I want to be part of that plan, I'm happy to fulfill the Lord's plan, then there's no illusion or anxiety for the living being. And on that spiritual platform, we gain a common interest, a oneness of desire, where Krishna's happiness becomes our happiness. Krishna becomes the center of enjoyment. Whenever we have a moment, we don't waste that moment. Whenever we have a moment, we want to serve Krishna because Krishna is the center of our enjoyment. On the material platform, there's always a clash of interests, both individually and collectively, resulting in anxiety and lamentation. The only solution is to have a common center. The only common center for all living beings is the Supreme Person, from whom everything is emanating. By placing him at the center of our activities, we enjoy an eternal life of bliss and knowledge in a loving relationship with him. So oftentimes this phrase is used, that putting Krishna in the center. And what does that mean when we put Krishna in the center? What it means is that the activities that we do in our family life, in our personal lives, those activities are in service to Krishna, meaning we want to do activities that are devotional service. So this is how we bring Krishna in the center. So in the evening, when the children are very cranky, they're very tired, everyone is very tired, everyone is very cranky, then to have kirtan, this would be a way to bring Krishna in the center. That rather than like most families, materialistic families do, rather than turning on the television to try to diffuse the chaos of the family, we do kirtan and everyone becomes involved in it. And by doing Sankirtan, we are putting Krishna in the center. And everyone becomes happy, Krishna is glorified, and our life becomes purified. And then there's no anxiety or lamentation because everyone is engaged in Kirtan. Everyone has a common interest. Everyone is thinking, how can I glorify the Lord? If we turn on the television, then one person will say, no, I want to see channel 2. Another person will say, I want to see channel 4. Another person will say, no, I want to see channel 6, because there's a clash of interests. Our sense enjoyment will become inhibited by the other person because they have a different conception of enjoyment because there's no collective interest. So spiritual life is putting Krishna in the center, and that is the rasa dance. Here in the material world, there's always a clash between different individual beings because here the proper center of enjoyment is missed. The real center of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, who is the center of the sublime and spiritual rasa dance. We are all meant to join him and enjoy life with one transcendental interest and without any clash. That is the highest platform of spiritual interest And as soon as one realizes this perfect form of oneness, there can be no question of illusion, moha, or lamentation, shoka. So this is the beauty of learning the scriptures from a prema bhakta, a pure devotee of the Lord, from Srila Prabhupada. That such a, you could say, philosophical point, an abstract point, Prabhupada in the purport brings it up to the highest madhurya bhava, the highest level of spiritual realization, and he brings us along with him. And this verse, it's showing us, like people in the material world, they're so concerned about conflict management, how to become free of all conflicts. It's giving us the solution to become free of all conflicts, the actual solution, not again an artificial solution, but the real solution. And furthermore, not just that, Prabhupada is bringing us to the highest level of harmony. The highest harmony is found in the rasa dance. This is the dance of harmony, where everyone is dancing in perfect step, in perfect beat, in a perfect dance to Krishna, because Krishna is in the center. Everyone is dancing in this perfect way because Krishna has been put in the center. Again, such a nice verse. The real, paragraph. The real center of enjoyment is the Supreme Lord, who is the center of the sublime and spiritual rasa dance. We are all meant to join him and enjoy life with one transcendental interest and without any clash. Spiritual oneness is one in quality. All living entities are spiritual, one in quality with the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of sparks in relation to the fire. So the Uttamadhikari sees oneness in the sense of everything being the energy of the Lord. There is and is not a difference, but the oneness cannot be overlooked. Srila Prabhupada makes the point that this verse is explaining the perfection of Krishna consciousness. So as Prabhupada again emphasizes this point in this purport, that we are one in quality with the Lord. There is and is not a difference. In quantity, we're different, but we have the same quality as the Lord. So we are just as sublime, just as pure, perfect, and spiritual as the Lord, godly as the Lord. But the Lord is unlimited and we are limited. Srila Prabhupada explains in a lecture on this verse, if one is 100% one with the Supreme Lord, then how he has come under the control of Maya? This question they cannot answer. So this is the big challenge for Mayavad philosophers, that if everything is one, if everything is truly one, then how can Brahman come under illusion? This means that there's no problem. To the impersonalists, they can never say that you're in Maya or illusion or you should do jnana. Because if you are Brahman and everything is truly one, then Brahman being unlimited, how can Brahman come under Maya? It cannot. First of all, Brahman and Maya assumes two. So right then and there, their theory of oneness is destroyed. It's completely finished. You have Brahman and you have Maya. But even if you somehow explain away Maya, how can this Brahman come under Maya? That means there's two, because a part of Brahman is coming under Maya, because Brahman itself, they themselves agree, Brahman itself cannot come under illusion. In fact, the whole point is to get out of illusion and get into Brahman. So if Brahman itself is under illusion, there would be no goal. The whole goal is to get to Brahman. So this they cannot answer, but we can answer. Why? The spark separated from the fire loses its fiery quality, mostly in ignorance, less in passion, and in goodness, it is most manifest. The living entities can possess up to about 80% of the qualities of the Lord in minute quantity. He possesses them all in full. So when we're in the mode of goodness, in the mode of ignorance, our sparkness, our fire becomes most covered. In passion, it is less covered. And in goodness, you can see the brilliance of that spark. And the spiritual qualities of a soul become manifest more in the mode of goodness. And when the devotee is self-realized, then their full spiritual quality manifests, but still they remain a spark. And therefore, they can come under the control of Maya. Um, this is why we have come under the control of Maya, because we are a small spark, not the whole fire. Now, this spark can have up to 80% of the qualities of the Lord. So Krishna has a certain number of qualities, and we cover this in the Nectar Devotion also. And the most qualified living being, which I believe is Lord Shiva, I'm doing this on memory, can have up to 80%. But we can have something like 64% or 55% at most in the material world for ordinary living beings. But even those 55 qualities we have to a minute extent. So Krishna has 64 qualities, and even Mahavishnu, who is not a living entity, has 61 qualities. So Krishna has 64 qualities. Mahavishnu, Lord Vishnu, has 61 qualities. And because he's not a living being, that means he has something like what, 95%, let's say, of all the qualities. And only Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan Krishna, has all 100%. And what are those three qualities that even Vishnu does not have? One of them is playing the flute. Only Krishna can play the flute in the way that he plays the flute, the transcendental flute. Another is relating with like Madhurya Ras, relating with the gopis and the devotees of Vrindavan. And there's also a third one, I'm forgetting what exactly the three are. But this, like that. Those three things are only present in Krishna himself. Even Lord Ram didn't play the flute, right? He did not enchant the whole forest of Dandakaranya with his flute sound. No, with his arrows, he killed all the demons in the Dandakaranya forest. So only in Krishna's pastimes, only Krishna as Krishna has the flute. It's Krishna's thing. And only Krishna dances with the gopis. Lord Ram was, Eka Patni Vrata. He was a married man. Parikiya Rasa and Svakiya Rasa were not both in him. Only Svakiya Rasa was there. So Krishna has certain qualities that no one else has. And Krishna possesses all 64 in full. Even the qualities that we do have, we have them to a minute degree. The real center of our enjoyment is the Supreme Lord. We are all meant to join him and enjoy life with one transcendental interest and without any clash. So everyone in this world, all beings in this world, are meant to enjoy one transcendental interest. The Father extends himself through his children and maintains them in order to derive pleasure. If the children obey the Father's will, family affairs will run smoothly with one interest and a pleasing atmosphere. So as I mentioned to you, these slides were the mercy of Mother Urmila. So I didn't write this, and this is not a bias from a man's side. But Prabhupada here is giving an analogy or an example that, why in Vedic culture do we kind of have this more patriarchal idea. The idea is not that the man or the woman. The idea is that there's more harmony if everyone is sort of aligns themselves with one desire, right? This is even in like work. This is a corporate business culture that when there's a good leadership, when there's a good leader, and the employees can share the vision of that leader, then that organization moves very, very nicely. It moves very smoothly. Even though others have also good ideas, but at the end of the day, in order to make things work, we have to follow someone's lead. Because then everyone works, otherwise everyone goes in different directions. The same thing in our temples, right? There's so many advanced devotees, but we choose one devotee that this person is the temple president. And that person then takes that service. And if people are willing to align themselves with that person's direction, then things go very smoothly. So in the same way, in this whole material world, if we all align ourselves with Krishna, who is the supreme enjoyer, then everything goes very smoothly. So the children have to align themselves with the father, because the father is older and kind of more experienced than them, or the mother. And then family life goes very smoothly. In the same way, we as the children of God, if we align ourselves with Krishna, then everything goes very smoothly. The Supreme Atma or Paramatma alone maintains all the individual minute beings, for the Supreme Lord wants to derive pleasure out of their affection. And Krishna on his side it's not just that we are meant to be obedient slaves of the Lord, but Krishna on his side is trying to reciprocate that love. He is continuously reciprocating that love by reciprocating that affection. Krishna wants our affection, and he gives 100-fold his affection to his devotees. It's interesting that the Chinese philosopher Confucius said something very similar. He said that in this world, he said, there's always someone superior and there's always someone inferior. He said, you will never find two people who are completely equal. He was actually a very sharp philosopher. He was not trying to search after false equality. He said, no, the fact is, even amongst friends, he said, one friend is slightly superior and the other is inferior. So he said the inferior person has to serve the superior person, has to, respect the superior person. But the superior person in a superior role must practice empathy, human-heartedness, kindness, and compassion. And he said, if these two things come together, then you have the ideal harmonious society. The inferior person is subservient or respectful towards the superior, but the superior person is practicing human-heartedness, kindness, and compassion. And so therefore, the Vedic system is never a system of repression or abuse, but rather it's a system of recognizing natural differences in people, natural hierarchies, and ensuring that everyone is elevated and liberated in whatever position they are. So by fulfilling their natural course of life. So like Confucius was mentioning, there's the duties of the devotee, and there's also the reciprocation of the Lord. And then the last verse, and this is short, so we are soon coming to the end. Mantra 8. Saparyaga chukram akayam avranam ashnaviram shuddham papa vidham kavir manishi paribhu swayambhur yatha tathyoto rathan vyadhatach chashvatibhya samabhya. Such a person must factually know the greatest of all, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unembodied, omniscient, beyond reproach, without veins, pure and uncontaminated. The self-sufficient philosopher who has been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. So those who are in ignorance, when they read this verse, they think, oh, see, God does not have veins. God is unembodied, so therefore God is formless. But Prabhupada explains that how without veins means that God has a spiritual body. Here, the Isopanisad is not saying that God has no form. Rather, it's trying to destroy the false conception that God is a material human being. Rather, God has a spiritual form. And in every dictionary, a spiritual form does not have veins. Why? Because it's unbreakable. You cannot break it into different parts. In the material world, you can break everything into different parts until you come to something that you cannot break, like a proton or a neutron. And that we say is the fundamental building blocks of the world. Similarly, a spiritual body is a fundamental building block. It's not something you can break into pieces. It is eternally what it is. So, and it's also a form, but not exactly a body. It's not a body made of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So Krishna being unembodied means he has no material body. He has a spiritual form. He has no parts to his form, meaning there's no way to break it apart. There's no veins. It's a spiritual body. Mantra 8 describes some qualities of the Lord as he is known by the Mahabhagavata, described in mantras 6 and 7. Mantra 8 further explains the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Person as he reciprocates with all living entities. The Lord is not limited by any material qualities. Thus, he may expand his form into innumerable forms to perfectly reciprocate with all living beings according to our desires to please him, or even hide his form from those who wish to forget him. In this material world, he is fulfilling our desires according to our qualifications and activities, or according to the law of karma. So, such material desires may cause us pain. But on the spiritual platform, we simply desire to please the Lord, and he helps us. So the second part of this verse is that Krishna is everyone. Not a blade of grass moves by the will of the Lord. Similarly, if our desires are fulfilled, we must always thank the Lord. Because it's Krishna, even in this material world, who is fulfilling our desires. Gita is saying, right? Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasha. Ahankara vimudhatma manyate. Only a foolish person, a mudha, thinks of activities, that they have accomplished something, when in fact it is Krishna who does it all for us. Only if we have some good fortune, good luck that Krishna has given us, can we accomplish anything. You notice how sometimes things never fall into place, and other times things just fall into place. So who's doing it? It's Krishna who's actually doing it. In spite of our efforts, oftentimes things don't fall into place. And oftentimes, without any effort, things fall into place. So that means that we are not doing it. It is Krishna that is doing it. And what to speak of this material world? In the spiritual world, Krishna is fulfilling the desires of all of his devotees and the living entities there. But in the spiritual world, we don't have those desires. So actually, we just desire to serve Krishna. Serve Krishna, Krishna helps us. Even to serve Krishna, Krishna gives us the instruments we need to serve him. So Krishna is, we think that where is God? People ask the question, where is God? But the Isopanisad here is asking the question, where not is God? Where is God not present? All of our desires are only fulfilled because of the transcendental Lord. So the Lord's characteristics that are being described in this verse is the Lord has a spiritual body. The Lord is omniscient. The Lord cannot be subjected to criticism. The Lord does not have veins. He doesn't have a material body. The Lord is pure and uncontaminated. The Lord is self-sufficient, nor who fulfills everyone's desires. We see how different the Lord's form is from the living entities. There's no difference between his body and himself. The deity is an example of such a form. And so in this purport, Prabhupada really talks about the deity, because this is the actual proof that the Lord can manifest in his deity form. Because the Lord does not need veins to have a body. So in our case, there's a difference between the soul and the body. But in a spiritual body, the spiritual body is the soul. The soul is the spiritual body. Similarly, Krishna's form is himself. And the deity is non-different than Krishna, because Krishna manifests himself as that deity. And he manifests himself as that deity as long as we are worshiping him, generally speaking, except for deities that are, you could say, self-manifesting. Some deities, they are, they're independent of our worship. They're there. But generally speaking, the sincerity that we worship the Lord, the more Krishna will make his presence known. And Krishna is present everywhere, but he makes himself known in the form of that deity. And therefore we see that even great devotees, like we were just hearing the pastimes of Lokanath Goswami, he was a pure devotee of the Lord and a personal, great associate of the Lord Chaitanya. And he was towards the end of his life, he was constantly chanting Krishna's holy names, and he was incessantly shedding tears. But even he, at a certain point, desired to have a deity. And one may ask that if he was constantly chanting the holy names of the Lord, why did he want a deity? If he was constantly seeing the Lord's presence there. And it's because the deity, Krishna, the devotee sees Krishna everywhere, in the holy name, in every atom, in every person's heart. But the deity is Krishna revealing himself more clearly, more obviously. He's actually becoming present there. So that is the position of a deity. Unfortunately, fools cannot appreciate his forms, so he withdraws himself from them. He can only be appreciated through devotion and reveals himself according to the degree of one's devotion. So, to the degree of our devotion, we can see the Lord present. The verse also makes the point that the Lord has been supplying everything since time immemorial. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of how a certain qualification is not enough. This is the example I was mentioning before. One has to be recognized by authority. He fulfills their desires in whatever way they like, even to the point of letting them go to hell if they really want. But if they want to go back to Godhead, he helps in all respects. So Krishna is the supplier, and therefore, if we want to go back home, back to Godhead, then we must then Krishna will fulfill our desire. And so we should desire to go back home, back to Godhead. Otherwise, if we desire to enjoy the material world, he'll let us enjoy the material world, and he'll let us stay here, and he'll continue supplying us material necessities. And this image is so beautiful. It's showing how Krishna is a supplier to whoever asks him, and supplies whatever they want from him. Duryodhana came to Krishna. He's sitting next to him, and he wanted Krishna's army and his soldiers, and Krishna gave it to him. And Arjuna wanted only Krishna, and Krishna gave Arjuna himself. So similarly, the devotee of the Lord who just wants Krishna gets Krishna. But a devotee of the Lord who wants material facilities, who wants some honor and respect in this world, who wants some material facilities, who wants even a spiritual, or you could say mystical perfections, Krishna will give that devotee that, but will keep himself away from that devotee, will not give himself to that devotee. So in our mind, we have to be very clear. I just want Krishna. I don't want anything else. I just want Krishna. So that is, then Krishna will supply what we desire. Krishna is self-sufficient and pure. Only he is self-sufficient. He is also so pure that impure things become purified through contact with him. And Prabhupada gives the example of the sun. The sun shines on the flowers, and it also shines on a trash can. Wherever it shines, it purifies. Even if he appears to do something sinful, it is actually completely pure and purifying. Srila Prabhupada explains that this is the most important part of this verse. So Krishna is self-sufficient, and because he is God, Krishna is actually the very definition of goodness. He is the very definition of good. And because we're not self-sufficient, we need another bar for goodness, and we have to match that bar. But because Krishna is truly independent, because Krishna is truly self-sufficient, he doesn't need the help or the approval of anyone. Imagine if we were truly self-sufficient, like really we didn't need anyone or anything in this world. We could do whatever we want. We need others. We need the mercy of God. We are dependent. Therefore, we can't do whatever we want. So Krishna's self-sufficiency is related with his purity. Because he is self-sufficient, he defines what is good and what is bad. And therefore, he defines what is pure and what is impure. And therefore, whatever he does is perfectly pure. It is the greatest, purest, highest platform of love of God. And he tells us what we can do as pure and impure. And Prabhupada is saying this is the most important part of this verse, recognizing Krishna's purity, Krishna's self-sufficiency. So here's a summary. We've come to the end. The Supreme Lord is the greatest person and possesses unique characteristics. Within him, all contradictions are resolved. The pure devotee sees everything and everyone in relation to him and are therefore completely free from anxiety on the transcendental platform. By rendering devotional service in this consciousness, they realize him directly. So this is the summary that Krishna is the greatest. He possesses unique characteristics. All contradictions are resolved in him. And when we realize that Krishna is present in all things, and we see everything in relationship to Krishna, all of a sudden, our worries go away, because everything, whatever happens, is good. It is Krishna's plan. It had to happen that way because this is Krishna and Krishna's manifesting to us. And in this consciousness, we can render devotional service to Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, if there's any questions, comments, please, this is a good time. So I think first we have Sham Kishori Mataji. Please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandat Pranam. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. Prabhu, yes, thank you. So Prabhuji, one point was that we should see Krishna, everyone as a part and parcel of Krishna. And also it was mentioned that we should not be envious of everyone, anyone, and basically not a blade of grass moves without his desire. So I was just reflecting on what happened on November 30th with the high school shooting in, which was very unfortunate. Now, when people do such things where they are misusing their independence, how can we still practically continue to see Krishna's hand? Or, and we understand that it's karma. It was also the karma of the victims, but still it's a very hard pill to swallow, especially for probably the parents of the victims and things like that. So how can we practically apply what we are learning with the situations that we see around us.
Yes, so this is, I think, where Prabhupada's that part, that particular slide and passage that I mentioned, this is the part where the following and the imitation point that Prabhupada is making really comes into play. So we find like the Pandavas and Draupadi, when Ashwathama, this murderous person, right, when he comes and he kills the sons of Draupadi, then Draupadi, because she is an Uttamadikari and a pure devotee of the Lord, she is able to immediately forgive him. Immediately she's able to forgive him um, and think about his good. She's able to become his well-wisher, in spite of the fact that she caused her so much pain. We at this platform cannot imitate that, and therefore the parents of these children, they cannot imitate Draupadi's example. But it's a fact that I was just hearing a video clip of a survivor of the Holocaust, a Jewish survivor of the Holocaust, and she saw all of her family members being killed by the Nazis. She herself was tortured by the Nazis. She's about 90 years old right now. And she said that I was never able to overcome this pain for many decades until finally she said, one day I forgave the Nazis. And she said that set me free. So the fact is that it's not just that these principles, we're encouraged to follow them, but the fact is that we have no choice but to follow them. The fact is that we have to follow them if we're going to lead a happy life. At a certain point, these parents, they will have to forgive the murderer. And that's the only thing that's going to give them peace. But yes, we cannot expect them to, like pure devotees, do it the next day. But they'll have to forgive him. And in advanced devotees, we also see that they will also get the quality of being a well-wisher of such a person. And that requires a spiritual outlook that the parents cannot do, be a well-wisher of that killer unless they're a devotee. And a practical example of this is that once a devotee, he was a truck driver, a very sweet, very sincere, advanced devotee. He used to drive a truck, and this big semi trucks. And one time he was driving the truck without the trailer. And when you drive the truck without the trailer, it's actually quite imbalanced. It can fall over. And so this drunken man, he was driving his car 120 miles an hour. And he came and he was just stopped at a stoplight, and he smashed his car into the truck of this devotee who was driving the truck. And because of that, the truck fell over and it skid down like for half a mile on the highway. And when the devotee came out of this accident, he was permanently on a wheelchair, permanently handicapped. And after some time, this man, I mean, American laws are so crazy. He actually wasn't drunk. He was crazy or something like this. And so that man didn't go to prison. I mean, it was like an accident. You make a mistake, or it was you could say irresponsible driving, but it wasn't actually considered a crime or something like that. So he maybe went to prison for a year and then he got out again. Imagine. And then later on, this devotee got the news that this same man was in another accident where he hurt another person like this. But then in that accident, this man died. And so someone came to give this news to that devotee that, this man who hurt you so much, I mean, ruined his life, has died. And he thought the devotee would be so happy. But that devotee, he was genuinely very, unaffected by hearing that news. And he was not celebrating or happy with that news. So we see that this is the softening of the heart, that the devotee, he was thinking about his welfare, that this man was drunk, crazy, and he hurt himself and others so much. He put in a prayer for him. So gradually we can develop this mood, and this devotee was driving a truck. He was not like a sannyasi or a big famous devotee in ISKCON. He was a pretty ordinary devotee, but he was acting in this example on the Uttamadikari platform, where he was thinking of the welfare of someone who had caused him great pain.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you. Nice question. Pushpanjali Mataji. Oh no, Ambika Mataji, you're next.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Very wonderful class, Prabhuji. I practically, like those two examples that you discussed about, when we are driving and if somebody cuts off, naturally people get angry. So, I know somebody who is a devotee and that happens to him a lot of time. And it's like, I think, I'll talk about this. So, how should we carry our, consciousness or mind, at the time. So that's very wonderful. And also, you discuss about the envy and things that you see outward, in the work and all that, so that's for how you should behave. So that is very wonderful, very practical. So the question, Prabhu, I have is about, and so the verses that we are reading from Isopanisad is, they are all kind of, talking about the supremacy of the Lord. But, obviously, it's not talking about, it hasn't mentioned specifically anywhere that, the Supreme Lord is Krishna. So if, the people who are reading Isopanisad, who are not Vaishnavas, they can, make their own interpretation and they can think, Lord Shiva is, that Supreme Lord, or Ganesha or Brahma, so they can have their own interpretation. So that's, how can we be sure and say to those non-Vaishnavas that no, Krishna is the Supreme Lord? Because I was discussing, I met somebody other day and they are new also, like sort of a new devotees, and same thing, they like, the services, the dance, all our activities. But at the same time, it's hard for them to conceive and understand that, why Krishna is the Supreme Lord, why not why do you say others as demigods, like they don't like this concept. And it's like, oh yeah, Prabhupada is a follower of Krishna, and that's how he wrote all his purport in translation, that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Versus other books that the others have wrote, they think, Lord Shiva is the Lord. So can you explain, like, what are the solid and concrete points where we can say, no, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Lord Shiva is a demigod,
Yes, Mataji. Very nice question, actually. This is why, actually, the Upanishads are taught in so many universities around the world, like thousands of universities around the world in philosophy classes. And books like Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita are not taught so commonly as the Upanishads. And this is because the Upanishads are written in a way that they are non-sectarian. And like you're saying, that could be a drawback, because then people don't know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But that's also Krishna's way of pulling people in. It's also a strength, because it's saying that whoever is God, meaning the Supreme Person, whatever name you want to call him by, that Supreme Person is the ultimate person. Now, going to your question, some people may misunderstand, where they may say a demigod is God. And that's our job as aspiring devotees, to try to encourage them and clarify their doubts. And that's why we have purports, the pure devotees come and tell us. But like people who believe that Jehovah is God, or Allah is God, or Vishnu is God, this knowledge is also relevant to them. They won't say, oh, I won't read this book because only Krishna is there, and I don't believe Krishna. No, you have any God, whoever you want to say is God, but this is the nature of God. So the Upanishads are more cryptic, they're more general, more ambiguous in the way that they teach. And this is to, just like the Vedas are trying to take fruitive workers who even eat meat and elevate them by giving them ritualistic knowledge and activities to elevate them. In the same way, the Upanishads are trying to bring people who are on the level of jnana, who are not very advanced, trying to bring them from that level higher up. But because they don't directly describe the glories of the Lord, This is why Vyasadeva eventually had to write the Srimad Bhagavatam. If the Upanishads had everything, why would he have written the Bhagavatam? But no, even after writing the Upanishads, he was feeling empty in his heart, and therefore he wrote the Bhagavatam because of the very reason that you said, because Krishna is not being directly described. And this is why we can read actually any Vedic scriptures if we read it hear it from the words of a pure devotee like Prabhupada, because the part that Isopanishad is missing, that part Prabhupada is fulfilling in his purport. When we hear it through Prabhupada's words, we see that actually the Upanishads are saying exactly what the Bhagavatam says. But Vyasadeva was feeling unhappy because he hadn't directly made that connection for people, so people would not have known that. And therefore, as a pure devotee of the Lord, and also incarnation of the Lord, in the Bhagavatam, he's making that connection distinct, just like Prabhupada is making that connection explicit in his purports. So yes, that's why our most important book, therefore, is the Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Nice question, actually. Very good point. Yes. Param Karuna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. So, Prabhuji, I had, after hearing Mataji's question and your response, a separate question sort of evoked in my mind, different from what I had originally thought I would ask.
Yeah.
If you could please share some pointers or resources about the position of Lord Shiva that can be used in our preaching. I mean, you very nicely explained the aspect of why the Upanishads do not have the sectarian aspect, and that's the reason, that's sort of the plus point, that they are widely used by many categories of people. But specifically when talking to new devotees, and the question of Lord Shiva comes up very often. And I have heard many classes and I have read certain places, but somewhere I feel myself that I'm myself a little don't have the very specific tools or resources to answer this very crisply, even in the Vaishnava sense. So could you, if you can point to some few key resources which we can use to share with devotees who are coming into the Vaishnava gathering, into Hare Krishna discussions or ISKCON discussions at least, then that would be very helpful.
Yes, Prabhu. I will try to find a few and I'll share it on the group, because it's a very, very common challenge, and it's a very important one. And even for devotees, we need clarification on that. So actually, there are a few that come to mind, and I'll share that on the group, Prabhu. That'll be very helpful for all of us.
Sure. Can I ask the question that I was intending to ask? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So the question was regarding the superior and inferior position, and you said everybody is not equal. So as devotees, we, in our mood of humility, or at least we try to be in that mood, we see everybody as our superior. So how do we, other than, let's say, our children or some very small select group of people who we say, okay, I am your, so to say, authority, how do we, in our minds, know who is superior, who is inferior?
Right now we are on the Madhyam Adhikari level, and so we do make distinctions. Because we're not on the Uttam Adhikari level, we don't see ourselves as most fallen. We see, okay, no, I'm more advanced than people who are eating meat or whatnot. So we make distinctions, and because we make distinctions, we can determine, okay, we can understand different levels of advancement The only exception to that is identifying a pure devotee. So Prabhupada says only a pure devotee can identify a pure devotee. So then the question is, if only a pure devotee can identify a pure devotee, then how can we ever know who's a pure devotee? Because we're not a pure devotee. And if we need another pure devotee to identify a pure devotee for us, then how will we know that that person is a pure devotee so that they can identify another pure devotee, right? So, so through our common sense, we understand, we're able to figure out, Krishna has given us enough intelligence that we can figure out that, this person is perfect and ideal. Krishna did give us this much because this was his purpose of the material world. I mean, he gave us this much intelligence, and that's why he gave the intelligence, is so we could find the path in bhakti. So therefore, we must have that much intelligence that we could do it. So our intelligence tells us, okay, Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee. I don't know about others, but Prabhupada is obviously a pure devotee. And then Prabhupada said he set up a governing body commission to help us identify what is right and wrong and identify the advanced devotees. So together as a community, the governing body commission decides, okay, this person can be a spiritual master in this movement. They allow them to be an initiating spiritual master, and this person cannot. This person can become a sannyasi, this person cannot. So because Prabhupada is a pure devotee, then he set a system in which we can identify other advanced devotees. And so as we were mentioning I think maybe last class, I was mentioning that to say that Prabhupada is the only pure devotee is also wrong. And to also say that that only my guru is the pure devotee and I don't care so much about Prabhupada, that's also wrong. Because how do we know our pure devotee is a pure devotee? It's only on the basis of Srila Prabhupada and his movement that I know that my guru is a pure devotee. So we can understand levels of devotees by applying our intelligence and also depending upon the guidance of those who are pure based upon the authority of someone who is pure. So I think it's both. We have to use our common sense, our own intelligence, follow our own heart, see what Krishna is revealing to us. Sometimes we may see miracles or something that Krishna may reveal to us, all the while not just trusting our own decision, but also depending upon the counsel of the sadhus to identify another individual sadhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Very nicely explained.
Thank you. You always appreciate even a simple and a very basic explanation. So that's your good quality, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Your explanations are very crisp and very, very nice.
Oh. Yes, Prabhu, and we are all very encouraged by you as well. All the nice preaching that you are doing and bringing so many people to reading Bhagavad Gita. Thank you.
Trying a little bit. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Gopal Govinda Prabhu, and this can be our last question for today.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you. Please accept my obeisances. I'm audible, right? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Pushpanjali Mataji, I missed you. So you're also. I just completely forgot. I don't know today what I'm doing. I'm not going down the list properly. So I just I'm getting cross-eyed. So after Prabhu, then Pushpanjali Mataji also. Yes. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. My question is simple. The Isopanisad, the book, the way you describe and on the content and the purpose, they seem very attractive for beginners and people who have a background of asking too many questions, and it does have that kind of a interesting flow as well. As a preacher, looks like we should be promoting that as a forefront book for all kind of walks of the life. But when we see the level of the book, there's a big picture of the Lord Vishnu in the
Yes.
that. So it just contradicts with its contents and the picture right in the front, because many people, even the Hindus and the Indians and the people who are like that, they have the culture, but they just don't accept it. The moment they see the DT picture somewhere, they don't like, take those books. So how any tips on that?
Actually, like you're saying, the Isopanisad has made many devotees, and most of the covers are a painting. So people do like paintings. Like, I mean, Vishnu is a painting, especially ISKCON paintings. People are very attracted to them. That's been my experience. That like when you're distributing books, if you show people the pictures, they're just like their eyes start rolling and they take the book. So I find it to be an attractive cover, with Lord Vishnu in the front here. This is the edition I have. But yes, for others it may be like, if they believe God does not have a form. If they believe God does not have a form, it may turn them off. But the thing is that Krishna is so beautiful, and because Jiver Swarup Krishna and Nityadas, because in our heart it's dormant there, our love for Krishna. I think it affects people very positively. I find that they are attracted to it because they know in their heart, they know it's true, it's real. So, but Prabhupada said that we always have to repackage and package Krishna consciousness in different forms for different people. So it's a fact. We can actually take Prabhupada's books and put them in new covers, different titles, and sell them in any form. You give the medicine in a capsule or in a tablet or in an injection. If any form the medicine goes in, it will work. And I've actually thought about this, that, why don't we take some of Prabhupada's books or sections of his books, and, you have Amazon self-publish. You can very easily publish them. And many of these books don't have copyright now because of laws. After 50 years, the author departs, the copyright becomes open. So we can take these books and, flood Amazon, have different titles like Cultivating the Human Spirit, and put Isopanisad in that title, or Soul Food and something like this. Put the same books in different titles, different covers, and market them. And just general people on Amazon, when they're looking, they might find these books. So there's so many different strategies that we could use to market these books.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. And if they're really turned off by then, you can give them the online link, because online there's no cover, and many people like to read online. That's like vedabase.com.
No, I don't have any citations of people turned off, but just generating the interest while explaining, and then they say that, we are explaining to a person who does not believe that there's a God has a form, and he sees the picture right there. And it's kind of hard to have them understand it right away. But yeah, I understand your point. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Pushpanjali Mataji, and again, apologies, I somehow skipped you.
No problem, Prabhuji. Give me time to think my question and explain it more clearly. So thank you so much for teaching Isopanisad the way you do, not make it technical, giving the essence. And I just want to reiterate the point how Krishna reciprocates. Today I heard so much that I needed to hear, and that essence coming out of Isopanisad, it's really amazing, because I think of Isopanisad as very technical, but it's really Krishna's reciprocation coming through you. So very grateful for that. Prabhuji, my question is on line of Shamakishori Mataji. Like, what happened in Bangladesh with the devotees and with the temple, with the deities, and that extreme, harassment of the devotees, that is a little bit hard for me to understand. That, when these people, when the devotees are being treated this way, why was Krishna not protecting them? Or like, is this is one way, like, is it just testing our faith that Krishna will protect or not? Or are there more reasons behind when things happen to devotees in such an extreme, murder, rape? I mean, like, what more can, bad happen to devotees?
Yeah, well, we can take inspiration from history, right? We can take inspiration from history. This is what happened to Jesus Christ. This is what happened to Haridas Thakur. They tried to kill him. They were not successful, of course, but they beat him in 21 marketplaces. This is what happened to Abhimanyu. This is what happened to so many great devotees of the Lord. And Krishna, it's hard to believe, but this is Krishna's mercy. This is Krishna's, it's his mercy coming in a certain way. And literally all we can do is just close our eyes and say that it's Krishna's mercy. But we cannot figure out how it is. And these devotees were either very advanced or they had something they had to go through that Krishna wanted to glorify them for, or also sometimes we become devotees, but we have some, we've had millions of lifetimes in this material world. And sometimes we think, enough is enough, my reactions should end now. But they don't end until the point of death. They don't end. And so sometimes there is a reaction that a devotee has to go through. But then in their next life, they're just born completely free from it. And because we only see this life, because we only see it in this life, we only see this life, we feel devastated. But if we saw their next life, and maybe in their next life, they have a spiritual form, or they're born, in a very elevated situation in Vrindavan Dham, then we would feel like, okay, it was all worth it. So we only have the vision of one life, and that's why it's hard for us. And these things are just a matter of faith. We have to have the faith that Krishna is doing it. And when something comes to us, then we have to figure out why Krishna did this. What am I trying to learn through this? All these things. But when things come in other people's lives, it's harder because we don't know. It's like, what is going on in their life? Why did Krishna do this? And generally, when devotees go through this, it's because they're very advanced. And Krishna, they're like Jesus Christ, they're sacrificing themselves for the service of the Lord. And that gives them the ticket to go back home, back to Godhead. So by that suffering that they go through, they earn their ticket to go back home, back to Godhead. And I know devotees who are still on this planet, but devotees have said that they're going back home, back to Godhead. They've earned their ticket. They've proven themselves to Krishna. They've done such immense service that Krishna is going to take them back home, back to Godhead. Their spiritual master has said this. Other devotees have said this. Their nature, their qualities show it. So it's and then also Hladini Mataji. She went to Africa to preach, and there she was gunned down by some mafia there. So it's not uncommon for devotees to go through this.
Yes, I was thinking of Aladini Mataji too, because I was kind of thinking like, she was happily practicing everything and she came out to preach and then she left so quickly. I mean, she could have preached for many more years, but yeah, we don't know what Krishna's plan was. Anyway, thank you so much for explaining that. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, everyone, for your kind attention. And I'll share the homework very soon. And we'll meet next week, same place, same time. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Dandavat Pranam.